keep continuity. You keep an experienced head coach on as an assistant, and I feel bad for Jacques in the sense of, he's right now he's kind of looking like a bridesmaid and never a bride, even though he was a bride before all of these guys, if bride is the coach. but you get to do that, and Sean Marks get to keep an important feature that's important to him and important to the players on the team, which is continuity. And players are always ready to just fuck it all up and change. But Sean Marks, what he was able to do was keep the guys they hired to get the guys they wanted. I'm not going to say Harrington was hired solely. I think Harrington's a good coach. I think he's good for the team. I think he's good for the Brooklyn community. So I like that guy a lot. He shares his family. I think he's awesome. He wasn't just hired to bring KD, but getting KD was an important part of the hire. When he came, it was like, oh shoot, the Nets hired Kevin Durant's personal shot instructor or whatever he was. And you saw him rise up to the ranks, through the ranks of the Nets and become an important figure. So by keeping Jacques Vaughn, you keep the rest of the coaching staff. I don't see Nash going out there and getting, or making too many alterations to the coaching staff. Sean Marks gets his continuity. Kevin Durant and Kyrie gets to keep the guys that they wanted on the bench before they got here. They stay. And the team's structure and overall way they run their system doesn't change that much because Nash is a small ball guy. Nash knows this offense inside and out. Look, man, this is a pretty good hire. You got anything bad you could say about it?
No, I mean, honestly, I think a lot of coaching hirings at this point, a lot of it is about who's got leverage when they come into a situation. And so I stupidly thought, to be honest, that I thought Kenny, for example, had brought in so much goodwill that it was going to be hard for the superstar guys to kind of knock him out because he had just this firm base of New York writers and fans and the whole NBA coaching landscape that really loved what Kenny was doing. But first of all, as we've agreed, I think Kenny ended up not doing that great of a job towards the end. And also it was clear that his juice wasn't as strong as we thought. Right. And what's interesting is when I look at someone like Nash, and obviously things change and we've seen people's reputations swing up and down like a swing set. The Nash is coming in as the head coach of our Brooklyn Nets with basically as high of an approval rating as you can humanly have in basketball circles. You're talking about a guy who is phenomenally well liked by legitimately everyone, who beyond the only thing he doesn't have going for him is that he won a championship, but that's not even brought up that much about him anymore because he's so well liked. And so KD and Kyrie, I don't even think have as much. I'm happy that they brought him in because it shows that they want him, and B, it also shows that they're okay with the amount of support that Nash just has by name recognition and by his clout and his status alone. Because the truth is that if KD and Kyrie are being irritating, and I don't want to really group KD into this because I think it's mostly Kyrie as more of a coach killer and more of a problem in the locker room.
I don't think Kyrie had any input on this hire.
Maybe he didn't, but I guess my thing is even if Kyrie is being an asshole about this stuff, he's not really going to have that much support because the truth is that unless Nash is doing something that's fucking egregious, which I don't think either of us see happening, people are going to side with Nash. And Kyrie may have come here with this whole I'm coming home, I grew up a Nets fan, yada yada, but this first season was bizarre to say the least. I know he got hurt, and I know his actual numbers were great, but it's not the team had a great record when he was on the floor anyway. And this team has a mandate to win, and a part of the way that that's going to happen is by them following whatever the hell Nash and the front office sees as the best way of getting this done.
Yeah, and And bigger than that, it's the more important thing is that you know, you getting a person who's not going to create volatility inside of the organization. When you add another component to your organization, you want that person that you add on to take you higher, to make you do something better, more efficient, cheaper,
Yep.
Whatever it is. I'm talking beyond the team. I'm talking about, and sometimes you can do that when it's a 4-year rebuild. When it's I've got all these kids, I got to make them pros. I've got to add some pieces. I got to install a whole new system. I've got to teach. That's volatility. And volatility always makes you take a step back. This allows the Nets to just keep going smooth, and I wanna address the Atkinson firing, because I heard something that the person who told me didn't really want me to know, didn't really want to tell me anything, but I just kept on saying that Kenny Atkinson was just bad at his job, and that's why he had to go. And this person, who isn't someone who can know, it's someone we all know too, as Nets Twitter. But we were talking about it, and he says, Kenny might have been a bad coach, but he didn't get fired for being a bad coach. He got fired because he stood up to Sean Marks, and what Sean Marks basically was having him coach the same way the Yankees do. So the Yankees, they fired their traditional manager, one of my favorite baseball managers ever, and I'm Joe Godley.
Girardi?
Yeah, fired Girardi, and everybody was like, "Why? What?" Like, I think we were more surprised Girardi didn't come back than thinking that he needed to go. But what Cashman wants to be able to basically mail in or send a paper plane down to whoever he has managing the team, and for the team to be managed by numbers. That's not necessarily what the Nets do, but Atkinson wanted to change the system up a little bit, and him and Marks clashed. They clashed about how they were going to fix the certain problems that the Nets have, and Marks was like, "This is our philosophy. This is what we're doing. We're not changing. It's going to be all right. Wait for KD and Kyrie to come." And Atkinson hated losing. Atkinson thought he could do some things, make some changes from the structure that was being mailed down to him from the front office. And I'm starting to believe that theory. I'm starting to see that the person who's really beholden to how all of this, the way the Nets work and the way the Nets play, I'm starting to realize that it's really Sean Marks. And so what Sean Marks gets with the Steve Nash hiring, he gets the continuity of the team still being able to play in the system that he believes will take us to the promised land. And I don't know. I don't have any real evidence. This is just me talking hoops with someone that I trust and think he knows the Nets like that. And I gotta say that what we've seen in the bubble and everything else kind of agrees with that. What say you, Sam?
So you complimented me earlier on my intelligence, and I gotta say, I think the Aaron Boone Girardi transition is honestly like completely spot on, and I think it's interesting because and for a couple reasons why I think it's a great point is because Girardi wasn't fired, as you mentioned, with what you were saying about Atkinson, because he was a bad coach. Girardi was fired, as you mentioned, because he wasn't as into the analytic framework, and he also wasn't as much of a player's coach in a time when like the computers and the numbers, and basically like if a manager can help out with player relationships, that's basically the crux of the job. It's not as much anymore about when should we put in X relief pitcher based off a gut feeling or whatever. And I think similarly with Atkinson, like this, like as much as me and you may have had some issues with a lot of his lineups,
Hmm.
like hashtag like free Kuruks and stuff like that, like
Right.
he he was. I mean, it's clear right now that this team is under a mandate to win, and not only is it under a mandate to win, it's under a mandate to win in a way that the superstar players, which however they got to the point they got to, the transition that Marks has made since getting this job has been insane, and it's astounding. And I think it honestly should be getting even more props than it does, because the Nets were at the bottom of the barrel generally, and to be in the spot to me is just crazy. And look, like he's not going with necessary. He basically knows, and I think we all kind of agree,
Hmm.
that this league is a superstar league, and it's a league that's dominated by, do you have the most talent? And the Nets have a ton of talent, and the way to do this is by making sure that the talent is put in places both mentally, in their heads, and also on the floor, like
Right.
physically, that they're in a place to win. And that's honestly about it. Kenny might be a much better basketball developer and mind than Nash is, for all we know. I have no idea. Just like Girardi might know a 50 times more about baseball than Aaron Boone. But
Yeah.
like at the end of the day, if you need a different voice in there, and if you need someone who's, look, Kenny, like as we talked about, Kenny is this old school like CYO Catholic basketball dude that like had been working his entire life to kind of get to this point, and felt like he wanted to run it a certain way once he got there. And I think Nash has got more of this, as we've seen, like more of this West Coast, relaxed, a little bit of like the Steve Kerr vibe. I don't think it's a coincidence that he was a consultant for the Warriors for the last couple of years.
Hmm.
Like I think this makes sense, and I think it also helps. I mean, I know we spoke a little bit off air. I think it helps that Nash is also like a really progressive guy who, like, in what I've seen in his comments about social justice and stuff like that, I think that speaks to a lot of players.
Right.
I think a lot of Nets fans, including myself included, um, thought and would have been happy to see the Nets hire an African American coach. And I think
Hmm.
Nash, well, obviously not that, is someone who I think does speak to players, including the new younger players. I mean, being like I know he was a mentor to RJ Barrett and stuff like
That's
that.
his
So
godfather.
yeah, it's his godfather. So I think it's overall really interesting. Look, the only thing that any of us could really say from a critique perspective is like the dude's never done it before, and who the hell knows how he's going to go. Like, I mean, right? Like Magic Johnson became a coach and was not cut out for it. But I mean, I like that Nash has also taken a bunch of years away from the game. I think this could be really good. But like, it's also, look, there's a ton of change, as you mentioned, which I think is like the best point so far, is like this team has also had an obscene amount of change every single year, and going from this current year to what we're about to have in 2020, 2021 is also going to be a lot of change. You're going to have a new coach. You're going to have probably some new people on the staff, some same, some different, whatever it is. And like, who knows what the roster is going to look like, but I mean, that's going to be the toughest thing, is like how quickly can everything gel together, especially during a pandemic.
Oh yeah, and then it's like it's the trust factor too. If we're gonna do this, if we're gonna ramp up really fast and just go into a season and a lot of times the trust factor has to be built, and at some point something happened where somebody very very key to the organization stopped trusting Kenny Atkinson, and it cost him his job. And whether that be Sean Marks, whether that be the players or whatever, I don't buy into that. You know, Kyrie and KD didn't want him anymore, and they got rid of him. I think that's bullshit. I think if you're Kyrie and KD, that's the last thing that you want for your brand. And these are two brand conscious guys. And we could talk about that a little bit at the end of the pod. But these guys weren't gonna coach kill in a year that they weren't gonna even really play anyway. This whole thing came from Marks and ownership. There's a very high possibility that the owner didn't like what he saw. That is very possible as well. That's what I believed. I believe that you're watching your new toy. It's kind of like my wife. You know, we're redoing our brownstone. And when you're doing a gut renovation, you either come out the other end a happier family or a divorced family. And, you know, I've watched my wife